Samurai Nippon. Shingen vs. Kenshin, why genius couldn't win at Kawanakajima.
Why couldn't two geniuses settle their score for 12 years? 5 battles fought, 5 draws. Total mobilized forces 200,000. Dead 20,000. This was the most beautiful stalemate in Japanese history. Takeda Shingen versus Uesugi Kenshin. The truth behind the 12-year Kawanakajima War revealed now.
But first, please subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. This helps the algorithm show you more videos perfectly suited to your interests.
Chapter 1. Historical Background.
1553. Japan was in the midst of the Age of Warring States. This year, Oda Nobunaga was still just 19 years old, a young upstart who hadn't even unified Owari. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, as Kinoshita Tokichiro, was warming Nobunaga's sandals. No one thought he would become the ruler of Japan. Tokugawa Ieyasu went by Matsudaira Motoyasu, living an unfree life as a hostage of Imagawa Yoshimoto. In other words, the future. Rulers of Japan were still supporting actors in history. At this time, the center of Japan was in central Japan. Takeda Shingen of Kai, age 32. Uesugi Kenshin of Echigo, age 23. These two great powers were about to clash in the buffer zone called Shinano. Shinano, present-day Nagano Prefecture? Area approximately 13,000 square kilometers. Current population about 2 million. During the Warring States period, this land was called the heart of Japan. Why? First, geographical advantage. The Tokaido and Nakasendo, two major arteries, intersect here. From Hokuriku to Kanto, from Kai to Echigo, roads pass through here. Second, economic power. Shinano's rice harvest was approximately 300,000 tons per year in modern terms. This was enough to feed an army of 100,000 for 1 year. Third, mineral resources. Shinano had gold, silver, and copper mines scattered throughout. Particularly, the Saku region gold mines produced about 500 kilograms annually, generating wealth worth approximately 3 billion yen. In modern value, whoever controls Shinano controls the realm. This was common knowledge in the Warring States period. However, Shinano had no unified power. Small lords like the Ogasawara, Murakami and Sanada clans over 40 were in chaos. Truly, it was a powder keg of the Warring States. 1548. Takeda Shingen begins his invasion of Shinano. Shingen's objectives were clear: Shinano's abundant granary and gold mine interests, and securing an invasion route to Echigo. Shingen's forces were powerful. Cavalry, rifle units, spear formations, everything was equipped, the strongest army of the time. In just 5 years, Shingen conquered most of Shinano. His invasion speed rivals modern blitzkrieg. By 1553, Shingen had conquered Saku, Chisagata, and Suwa. Only northern Shinano remained. However, here Shingen hit a wall, because the lords of northern Shinano made a different choice. They turned to the dragon of Echigo Uesugi Kenshin. Kenshin was only 23 years old, but already feared throughout Kanto as the Tiger of Echigo. Help the weak and defeat the strong. This was Kenshin's creed. Receiving the plea for help from northern Shinano lords, Kenshin made an immediate decision: I will stop Shingen's ambitions here. Thus, the stage was set for the clash. Between the Tiger of Kai and the Dragon of Echigo, two geniuses. That battlefield was Kawanakajima.
Chapter Takeda Shingen the Strategist.
Takeda Shingen, age 32. Height 158 centimeters, weight approximately 65 kilograms. Average build for the Warring States period, but his intellect was genius level. Shingen was the first man in Japan to apply statistics to military affairs. He had all villages in his domain report, population, rice harvest, and number of horses, creating a detailed database. This allowed Shingen to instantly calculate when, where, and how many troops could be mobilized. In modern management terms, he realized ERP, enterprise resource planning, 400 years ago. Shingen's retainers were also excellent. The 24 generals of Takeda Yamagata Masakage, Babanobuharu, Naito Masatoyo, Kosaka Masanobu. This is equivalent to a board meeting of a modern company. With annual revenue of 100 billion yen, Shingen was the CEO, his retainers were CFO, COO, CTO. Converting Shingen's annual income to modern terms, approximately 30 billion yen. Kai's gold mines alone produced about 1 ton of gold, annually, worth about 6 billion yen in current value. Add Shinano's rice, craftsman's skills, weapon manufacturing combined, immense wealth. Shingen's castle, Tsutsujigasaki Yakata, was a concentration of cutting-edge technology of the time: stone walls, moats, turrets, and Japan's first stone. Wall construction, total cost estimated at 10 billion yen in modern value, but Shingen had a fatal weakness: health. He suffered from pulmonary tuberculosis, plagued by chronic coughing and fever. Long expeditions were physically impossible. Battles had to be quick, decisive engagements. Meanwhile, Uesugi Kenshin, age 23, height 156 centimeters, weight approximately 60 kilograms, even smaller than Shingen. However, his body was forged like steel. Kenshin never missed daily sword practice and continued water ablutions. Even in Echigo's harsh winter, Kenshin's swordsmanship was said to be the finest of his generation. His signature technique was tsubame, geishi, deflecting an opponent's sword and striking the throat in an instant, a deadly technique. Kenshin's strength lay in individual power. He could charge into enemy lines single-handedly and take enemy generals' heads, the strongest warrior of the warring states. I have no equal Kenshin. Fought over 70 battles in his lifetime and never lost once. 100% win rate, the highest in warring states history. However, Kenshin had a major weakness: economic power. Echigo was a heavy snow region with rice harvest less than half of Shinano's. No gold or silver mines, sparse industry. Converting Kenshin's annual income to modern terms, approximately 8 billion yen less than a quarter of Shingen's. Therefore, Kenshin had to rely on plunder. He repeatedly campaigned in Kanto, seizing rice and gold from Hojo territory. This was Kenshin's main funding source. According to records, goods plundered in one of Kenshin's Kanto campaigns included 30,000 bales of rice and 300 ken of gold, equivalent to about 1 billion yen in modern value. Another strange characteristic of Kenshin: he never took a wife or had children throughout his life. One theory suggests Kenshin believed himself an avatar of Bishamonten and avoided women. He called himself Servant of Bishamonten and enshrined a Bishamonten statue in his castle. Or perhaps Kenshin chose to live only for the battlefield, abandoning family, descendants, everything living only to wield his sword. Recent research even suggests Kenshin may have been a woman. Evidence includes records of being unable to fight due to menstrual pain and feminine handwriting. The truth remains a mystery. But what is certain is that Kenshin was stronger and lonelier than anyone. Shingen loved his family, trusted his retainers, devoted himself to domain management. He was an organizational man. Kenshin loved solitude, loved the battlefield, drew his sword for justice. He was a solitary man. These two would clash at Kawanakajima for 12 years. It was like yin and yang, fire and water, organization and individual intersecting.
Chapter 3. Kenshin the warrior who never lost.
April 1553, First Battle of Kawanakajima. This was a skirmish. Combined forces of about 15,000. Shingen cautiously formed his position. Kenshin didn't pursue deeply. After 3 days of standoff, both sides withdrew. July 1555, Second Battle of Kawanakajima. This time combined forces of about 30,000, but again no decisive blow. September 1557, Third Battle of Kawanakajima. This time Shingen tried a new tactic: night raid. However, Kenshin detected the night raid and set a counter trap. The Takeda army fell into great confusion and was forced to retreat. 3 battles in 8 years, 3 draws, why can't they settle it? The answer lies in the terrain. Kawanakajima is a delta between the Chikuma and Sai rivers. Area approximately 30 square kilometers, east-west about 6 kilometers, north-south about 5 kilometers. Rivers serve as natural moats, making it extremely difficult to move large armies. Moreover, mountains loom behind, limiting supply routes. Furthermore, Kawanakajima was no one's land, located on the border between Shinano and Echigo, belonging to neither. Therefore, neither side could maintain positions long-term. Food and water had to be transported from outside once logistics reached their limit. Retreat was the only option. This stalemate continued for 8 years. Both sides were exhausted, and voices rose among retainers: we should give up on Kawanakajima. However, in 1561, Shingen finally moved. This time we settle it. I will completely crush Kenshin. Shingen devised the greatest operation in history. Its name, Suomonyo Sanghana Kitsutsuki Senpoti Woodpecker Tactique. Like a woodpecker striking both sides of a tree simultaneously, attack the enemy from 2 directions. This was Shingen's aim. The operation's details were as follows. Shingen's main force of 13,000 would position at Hachimanbara in Kawanakajima. Meanwhile, a detached force of 7,000, led by Kosaka Masanobu and Baba Nobuharu, would circle behind Matsendo Saiyo. Met Saijo altitude about 470 meters, a key position overlooking Kawanakajima. Here, the Uesugi army of 13,000 was positioned. Shingen's plan was perfect. At dawn on September 10th, the detached force will surprise attack Manent Saiyo. When the startled Kenshin army hurriedly descends the mountain, the main force will strike them head-on. Perfect pincer attack? If this operation succeeded, the Uesugi army would be annihilated. Kenshin would be killed. Opening the road to Echigo Shingen was convinced. Night of September 9th, the Takeda army of 20,000 quietly began to move. Shingen's main force of 13,000 set up camp at Hachimanbara. They lit campfires, making it appear as if the entire army was there. The detached force of 7,000 secretly headed behind Maat Saiyo. Torches extinguished, cloth in horses' mouths, moving silently. Met Saijo, the Uesugi army of 13,000 was positioned. However, Shingen didn't know that Kenshin had already seen through this strategy. Kenshin said, "Shingen will use the woodpecker tactic. Then we'll make our move too." Night of September 9th, the Uesugi camp on Met Saiyo was eerily quiet. Campfires continued burning, soldiers' figures visible, but they were all shadow warriors. Kenshin had already descended the mountain with all forces, moving secretly through the mist. Their destination was the Takeda main camp. September 10th, 800 a.m. Dense fog blanketed Kawanakajima. At the Takeda main camp, Shingen was having breakfast. Rice balls and miso soup generals and soldiers ate the same. That was Shingen's way. He still didn't realize he had fallen into a trap. Then the fog lifted. Before Shingen's eyes appeared the Uesugi army of 13,000, distance merely 500 meters. Within arrow range, the color drained from Shingen's face.
Chapter 4. Kawanakajima begins the stalemate years.
8:15 a.m. The Uesugi army began its assault. Kuruma Gakari no Jinkenshin's signature tactic. Cavalry launches wave attacks, relentlessly crushing enemy positions. First wave attacks, immediately followed by second, third waves. Like a giant wheel rotating, attacking one after another. The Takeda main camp fell into great chaos. Shingen shouts, "Form ranks! Create a spear wall! Rifle units forward!" But there's no time. Unprepared Takeda forces are assaulted by Uesugi cavalry. 8:30 a.m. Uesugi cavalry penetrated Takeda's center. The sound of spears and swords clashing, horses neighing, soldiers screaming, everything mixed, becoming a hellscape. 900 a.m. Takeda Vice General Takeda Nobushige was killed. Nobushige was Shingen's younger brother, the right-hand man Shingen trusted most. His death dealt a massive shock to the Takeda army. 9:30 a.m. Military strategist Yamamoto Kansuke also killed. Kansuke was the architect of the woodpecker tactic. Ashamed that his own strategy failed, he reportedly charged into enemy lines and died fighting. Furthermore, Morozumi Toranosuke, Haji Kano Tadatsugu, Segusa Moritadaki Takeda generals fell one after another. 1000 a.m. The battlefield had become a living hell. Gunpowder smoke filled the air, visibility a few meters. The smell of blood and mud stung nostrils, burning throats. Horse neighs, rifle explosions, soldiers' screams all mixed, ear-piercing. At their feet, bodies piled upon bodies. Friend or foe, no longer distinguishable. Takeda casualties already exceeded 4,000. This was 30% of the Takeda main force of 13,000. Normally, an army loses combat capability at 20% casualties. The Takeda army had already exceeded that limit. Shingen's main camp was on the verge of collapse, and then that legendary moment arrived. 10:30 a.m. Uesugi Kenshin charged into Shingen's main camp single-handedly. Takeda bodyguards were cut down one after another. Kenshin's swordsmanship was truly godlike in speed. Shingen Kenshin's voice echoed across the battlefield. Shingen remained seated on his camp stool, unable to move, military fan in hand, just staring at Kenshin. Kenshin's sword swung down. Shingen blocked that strike with his military fan. First strike, second strike, third strike, Kenshin's slashes were like a storm. Seventh strike, Kenshin's blade wounded Shingen's shoulder. Shingen's bodyguard Hara Osuminokami intervened with a spear, driving Kenshin back. Kenshin turned his horse and returned to the Uesugi army. Did this single combat really happen? Koyo Gunkan records this scene in detail. However, Uesugi Nenpo contains no such description. The truth remains a mystery. But Shingen's shoulder wound was fact. He hid this wound for life and never spoke of it, because it meant acknowledging defeat to Kenshin. 100 p.m. The battle situation shifted. The Takeda detached force of 7,000 returning from Mat. Saijo appeared behind the Uesugi army. Elite troops led by Kosaka Masanobu and Baba Nobuharu. Now it was the Uesugi army's turn to be caught in a pincer. Kenshin made an immediate decision: retreat. All forces crossed the Chikuma River. The Uesugi army began an orderly retreat. Serving as rearguard was the elite unit led by Kakizaki Kageye. They held off the pursuing Takeda army, protecting the main force. 300 p.m. The Uesugi army crossed the Chikuma River, securing the road to Echigo. The Takeda army abandoned pursuit. They too were utterly exhausted. 400 p.m. The battle was over. On the battlefield lay over 7,000 corpses. Takeda dead approximately 4,000. Uesugi dead approximately 3,000. Over 7,000 lost their lives in a single day. This became the fiercest battle in Kawanakajima history, later called the Battle of Hachimanbara.
Chapter 5. The Fiercest Day. The Fourth Battle of Kawanakajima.
After the Fourth Battle of Kawanakajima, both armies withdrew. Shingen to Kai, Kenshin to Echigo returned bearing deep wounds. There was no victor. The Takeda army occupied the battlefield. However, Takeda's losses were greater, and the pain of losing key generals was immeasurable. Meanwhile, the Uesugi army successfully retreated in good order, militarily a draw. 1564, Fifth Battle of Kawanakajima. However, this too ended in skirmishes. Combined forces of about 15,000. Less than half of the fourth battle, neither side had the strength for large-scale combat anymore. Thereafter, Shingen and Kenshin never fought at Kawanakajima again. Why? The answer is economics. Over 12 years of Kawanakajima Wars, the military expenses both spent were enormous. Shingen spent approximately 20 billion yen total over 5 campaigns. This was about 2/3 of Kai's annual budget. Kenshin spent approximately 30 billion yen over 5 campaigns and dozens of Kanto expeditions. This equaled 10 years of Echigo's tax revenue. Casualties exceeded 20,000 combined. This was over 3% of Kai and Echigo's total population of about 600,000 at the time. In modern Japan, equivalent to about 4 million casualties. With all these sacrifices, they gained nothing. Territory unchanged, no resolution. This may have been the most futile war in warring states' history, but both learned something from this battle. Shingen drastically changed his tactics after Kawanakajima. He avoided large-scale battles, focusing on diplomacy and intrigue, buying allies with gold, inducing internal divisions, expanding territory bloodlessly. This was Shingen's new strategy. In fact, Shingen never fought a single large-scale field battle for the next 10 years. Kenshin also focused on Kanto campaigns, keeping distance from Kawanakajima. He must have realized the fight with Shingen was an unwinnable, and there's a strange episode. In 1569, the Takeda domain suffered a salt shortage. The Hojo and Imagawa clans formed an alliance and stopped salt shipments to Takeda. Without salt, people cannot live. Food cannot be preserved. The Takeda domain faced an existential crisis. At this time, enemy Kenshin sent salt to Shingen. About 100 tons of salt were transported from Echigo to Kai, worth approximately 50 million yen in modern value. Kenshin said, "I fight with bow and arrow, but have no intention of causing suffering with rice or salt." The phrase "sending salt to the enemy" was born from this tale. This act symbolizes Kenshin's humanity. He didn't hate his enemy, rather, he respected him. Shingen also respected Kenshin. One letter states, "Uesugi Danjo Shohitsu Kenshin is my lifelong worthy opponent." Shingen and Kenshin, they never settled their score in life. 1573, Shingen died of illness, age 53. Until the end, he dreamed of unifying the realm. His will stated, "Hide my death for 3 years." He didn't want to show weakness to Kenshin. 1578, Kenshin also died of illness, age 49. He too was a man who devoted his life to the battlefield. His final words were reportedly, "No regrets." After both died, the Takeda and Uesugi houses rapidly declined. The Takeda house was destroyed by Oda Nobunaga in 1582. The Uesugi house submitted to Toyotomi Hideyoshi and barely survived. Ironically, those who took control of the realm were Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi, unrelated to Kawanakajima. So, was the Battle of Kawanakajima meaningless? No, it was not. This 12-year grudge was passed down to later generations as the aesthetics of Bushido. Respecting enemies, fighting fair and square, drawing swords for righteousness, not greed. This became the ideal samurai image engraved in Japanese hearts. The samurai image Nitobe Inazo depicted in Bushido was precisely Shingen and Kenshin. Even today, about 100,000 people visit the Kawanakajima ancient battlefield annually. Standing there, you can almost hear the sounds of battle from 450 years ago. Horse neighs, clashing swords, and the war cries of two heroes. Kawanakajima teaches the Japanese that there are things more important than victory or defeat. Fighting fair and square, respecting enemies, living for righteousness. This was the samurai way of life.
Ending when war becomes impossible. The economics of Kawanakajima.
The grudge between Shingen and Kenshin is told eternally precisely because it was never resolved. History is not made by victors alone. Losers and draws all are stories.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. In the comments, tell us which warring state's warrior you'd like to know about next. Your request might become our next video. Samurai Nippon. See you on the next battlefield.